with the vision of creating communities where people and nature flourish together. My guest today is a medical doctor. He is giving lessons to people with how trees are directly linked to their health, why they are important. I welcome Batte Charles from Uganda in Innovation from the Global South on Future Frank TV, the collective podcast of Traces&Dreams. Hi, Charles. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing good and very good to see you again after such a long time.
That's my pleasure. Charles, you are a medical doctor and you are running a social enterprise. Tell us something about that.
I'm a medical doctor. When I was in the medical school, I started a social organization called Tree Adoption Uganda. And that was mainly from my passion with the environment, with the climate, and with trees. So Tree Adoption Uganda is a social enterprise. We do this to really inspire a nature-inclined transformation and change of heart to undertake environmental sustainability activities, ecosystem restoration activities, and environmental education activities.
Why environmental project? I mean, you someone linked to public health, an area that is completely different and doesn't talk about environmental policies and how to save our environment, about climate change. And I see you frequently talking about that.
So two reasons for that, Almas. One is really a purely passion and also my upbringing. So I was born in Kamwokya. Kamwokya is one of the most impoverished slums in Uganda. It's an urban slum that is characterized by poverty, unemployment, crime. And my father had 8 children and adopted 5. So I grew up in a household of 13 children. And very soon my parents discovered that they cannot maintain this family in an urban slum because their income was not sufficient enough to take care of all of us. And so they made the decision to go back to our ancestral home, where we were now to be involved in agriculture to grow our own food. And when we got to our ancestral land, we cleared forests and turned them into gardens, harvested quite a lot of crop and yield. But very, very soon, I started to see that our produce dwindled, that reduced over time. And also that nature or rainfall, strong winds were becoming more and more a disaster for us, breaking down the crop that we were planting. So my young brain could not really marry what was going on to what happens when you do not use the land sustainably, influenced my passion for the environment. The second reason, which now I realize after coming into the medical school and the medical field, is that you cannot separate health and environment. If our climate, if our soils, if our surroundings are not healthy, we are not healthy. If our air is not clean, our lungs are going to be affected. The changing climate, the warming is going to lead to infections like malaria, escalating, etc. So being in the medical school helped me to realize that health and environment, health and climate are intricately connected. And I find myself at this intersection of bridging or demystifying the linkages between climate and health, which makes my work even more exciting.
That's wonderful. I mean, I asked you a very basic question that I felt that many of our viewers would be thinking about. I mean, how a doctor, and working on creating awareness within people for plantation of the trees. So completely agree with you that health is completely and directly linked to climate change. Charles, tell me something about the journey. When you started this social entrepreneurship, what was the idea behind? What was the dream that you were seeing?
This started as a passion, and it started when I was a medical student. And the dream was very simple. Let's plant as many trees as possible, and let's use this tree planting effort to empower other young people. So as I've been telling you about my story, moving into my ancestral home, which is a rural village of young people from the rural communities back into the urban areas, And the reason they were doing this is because they saw no opportunity in their rural settlements and they wanted to go to the city to find jobs, etc. But majority of them did not have the right skill set to get jobs in the cities, or the jobs in the cities were not available. And so a number of my peers, young people I grew up, ended up in drugs, in crime, and in slums, which we were already trying to escape. Question: can we use ecosystem restoration activities to empower young people? Can we plant trees to better our environment while at the same time empowering young people? That was my dream. It is still the dream.
So Tree Adoption Uganda gives training to young people for tree plantation. Am I right?
Our environmental education work is really focused around educating young people. What can young people contribute in this fight against climate change? A second is around empowering communities, especially vulnerable women in urban slums, building climate resilience for them. And we do this through training for them to transform organic waste into carbon briquettes. And then third is around community engagement. And this is where the tree planting comes in. Conductive, massive community tree planting to restore lost ecosystems, but also applying technology to this using a mobile app to collect all tree planting data, which improves transparency.
Why it is important to collect the data?
What I've seen, what I identified as the gap was around transparency. It is very common for a number of corporations, a number of individuals to come and say, we planted 10,000 trees, we planted 100,000 trees. But then when you ask them for the objective data that proves that actually these trees were planted, they do not have anything to show. Secondly, in our work, we've identified that when you do planting, some of these trees will die out, some of them will dry up. And so if you do not have data on each and every individual tree that is planted, monitoring and following up is going to be difficult. So this technology was really developed to bridge that gap. So part of the data we collect is in terms of species planted, is GPS locations of where all these trees are planted. But the other element is investors. Investors in ecosystem restoration activities would want to see such objective data because it's one way of showing them that your dollar is actually translating into an actual tree on the ground. And this is a database that you can use to show your own sponsors, your own participants, your own stakeholders, that these are the activities taking place in a particular country, and we have objective data on each and every tree that has been planted.
That's a wonderful idea. So this app is just being used by Tree Adoption Uganda, or it's an app that is available for anyone who would like to plant a tree and then would like to trace it as well?
Yes, so it is possible for other partners and other collaborators to use this application. So it's important that governments, organizations, individuals who are interested in using this application to monitor their own tree planting activities or initiatives reach out to us so that we conduct a formal training with them. We are able to look through their initial data sets.
And when you were training people for tree adoption, they are also obliged to use this app and, putting the data inside?
Yes. So every time we plant, every tree we plant, we collect this data. Currently, Uganda is undertaking a national tree planting initiative, for instance. And so we've recruited enumerators from different districts in the country, trained them, and they are already available in the various districts. Any individuals who want to participate in this campaign or any companies that are trying to participate in this campaign, when they reach out to us, we have a particular enumerator in the various districts that we put them in touch with to come on the planting day at the planting sites and collect this data. And these are trained enumerators. And the reason we emphasize training is to ensure that the integrity of the data that we are collecting is maintained at a very high standard. Many times you will, like I've already mentioned, see initiatives in the newspapers, etc., saying we've planted so many trees. But the question from the stakeholders is always around, where is the data? How do we verify? How can a third party verify that that is the actual number that you've planted? That is the actual number of trees surviving. So we are very, very keen on ensuring the quality and the veracity of our data. And that's why we do training. That's why we have individuals in each and every district in the country to ensure that data is being collected in a timely way, but also it is good quality tree data.
How many years you have been doing this work and how many people you have trained?
So we've been operating for just over 8 or 9 years. And since then, we've educated close to 20,000 young people all over the country. Secondly, we've engaged close to 1,000 smallholder farmers, and we've trained about 1,000 of them in sustainable landscape management and agroforestry activities. And then third, in the urban slums again, we've trained close to 1,000 households on how to convert organic waste into charcoal briquettes. Yes.
Great. Charles, I'm going to go back to a very basic question. You are linked with social entrepreneurship. What is social entrepreneurship for you?
A social entrepreneur is someone who has the ability to, one, identify a social problem, two, come up with solution to that social problem, and better if this solution comes up in a participatory approach. And then three, ability to make a sustainable business model around that solution, a business model that ensures sustainability for the enterprise, but also provides or contributes to the creation of positive social impact in the community.
So for making this sustainable business model, did you feel any kind of difficulties in that journey? You had a team of friends with you, you were alone. Tell us something about that.
So in the beginning, I was working by myself, and the biggest challenge there was balancing. If I had built a team right from the start, I think that would have been much easier. I guess the other challenge was really around convincing people to join this cause, being able to portray the vision that I had and being able to get people to buy in early. And these people could be farmers, could be investors, could be partners. And maybe the biggest challenge there was around perception. Number of people look at you and say, maybe they are not very serious. Maybe they won't be able to do this. So that lack of trust or that lack of confidence in young people is a huge challenge to social entrepreneurs. It's a challenge I experienced, and I hope going forward with increasing calls for active and participatory and meaningful engagement of young people, that can be addressed.
So how do you overcome that challenge?
What I've done to address this challenge early on is to show the people that I can do it. One of the issues that we had as young people at that stage is we were caught up in the cycle of pitching competitions. And for me at that time, I felt like there was a lot of time lost. And so I decided to focus with the very limited resources I had at that time to focus on actual work on the ground that could build traction and therefore confidence. And using those very little resources, I started activities on the ground, started coming up with reports and also stories from the community that showed that actually something is happening. And that's when people started to say, oh, what he's talking about is actually ongoing and there is a footprint on the ground. So for young people, again, for newer social entrepreneurs, your focus should be, if it's a social business, your focus should be on around either testing or piloting your ideas in the communities, in the markets. You can have the ability to either fail early or you have the ability to generate evidence on the ground on traction, impact, or adoption of your ideas. And it's that evidence that now investors will look on that will give them confidence to say, let me invest in such and such an idea because there is already traction and activity on the ground.
You mentioned about pitch competitions, and I met you in one of those pitch competitions, internationally arranged. And if I'm not wrong, you were one of those who got an award as well. Tell me a little bit about your own entrepreneurial journey in the beginning. How was it? And were you part of many pitching competitions? You just said that there was one point when you realized that actually it was a little bit of the wastage of time. What was that about?
I think briefly, I did participate in a lot of pitching competitions, and they were great because once in a while I won a bit of seed funding that could push my innovations, push my ideas forward, and allow me to take time to concentrate and work on those ideas that I created. But also, I witnessed early that they can be a vicious cycle that keeps you away from the people whose lives you want to change or the communities where you want to work. So finding a balance between the two is really critical.
Did they help you in some way for finding investors or investments?
Yes, I think what I would say the best way it helped me was in introducing me to a network or an ecosystem of people who up to this day have heard of Tree Adoption Uganda and they still reach out and they still write an email to say, hey, I want to introduce you to somebody. So I think that is a very imperative or important aspect of these conferences and these pitching contests, is that it gives you the opportunity to share your ideas with the world and to be part of a network of people.
Charles, normally innovation is linked to monetization. When we talk about social innovation, it's a little bit difficult. Did you face any kind of challenges, for attracting money or investments for your project?
Yes, so I think the biggest challenge I experienced early on was that I did not understand the investment space and what kind of investors there existed. So being able to identify that early as an entrepreneur to say, what am I giving back to my investor, or what does my investor expect in return of the investment is imperative to avoid spending a lot of energy reaching out to investors with whom your return on investment is not aligned.
This is the biggest actually challenge that I would consider, to find out to whom you should ask for money. Charles, I can see your journey is, really impressive. Going back to a very basic question, you are a medical doctor, you made a social innovation program, and then, going to the investors asking for money, and then going to the farmers. How you formed yourself, or found that narrative that you can make easily understandable to your audience?
One is really taking time to immerse yourself in your innovation, have an understanding and be ready to learn each day. Have this penchant for learning about the area that you're entering into. But secondly, which one of my favorite writers has talked about and written about recently, is reinvent yourself. And he says this is going to be the most important attribute or competence for young people going forward, is be able to reinvent yourself. When a situation requires you to reinvent yourself, then reinvent yourself in as best a way possible to be able to communicate, tell your story, and show what your skills and competences are.
That's wonderful. I was wondering, what would be the advice that you would give to the younger generation listening to you who would like to be working with social innovation programs?
I think one is young people of this generation should know that they are the most illustrious generation ever to grace this earth. And secondly, they are the most well-equipped generation to create impact. And therefore, there should be really no excuse. If you have very limited resources, then the question should not be how to get as much resource as possible. The question should be, how best can I use these limited resources to create positive social impact? And go into the community, try it out, test it out, test your assumptions, work with your community members, do something.
Where do you see Tree Adoption Uganda in the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, coinciding with the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, I see Tree Adoption Uganda as the leading ecosystem restoration organization in Africa that has the ability to show genuine, objective ecosystem restoration data for the world to see what we have done over the last 10 years.
Do you have any dream, dream for the rest of the world?
As the globe, as the world, we are all able to appreciate, we are all able to agree that we need to use our planet, our resources in ways that do not compromise the ability of future generations to be able to use the same planet.
Thank you very much, Charles. It was a pleasure having you in my show.
Thank you very much.
So, dear audience, I hope that you have liked our today's episode. If you liked, don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel of Traces&Dreams. This is your host, Dr. Almas, signing out. Take care until next episode. Stay healthy.